All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Comp 2450 Software Development 1. Gosh, I don't know about all of you, but it is intensely humid outside this morning. I ride my bike to work, and I'm really delighted that it was warm because I didn't have to wear a sweater today, but I also felt like I could not sweat when I was coming here, and it was like wearing a warm, wet blanket the entire way to campus, and that's not a pleasant way to ride a bike. I hope that you all have had an excellent weekend. Today, we're going to be actually coding. We are now 3 weeks into this course, and we're going to start doing some coding, so that's great. I'm looking forward to this. If you want to follow along with me today, I'm going to recommend that you install IntelliJ IDEA. I've linked here in the slides to the community edition, but I've also put a link to this in the lecture section for today's lecture on the course webpage. You're welcome to use the Ultimate Edition if you want. You're welcome to use other stuff to do this if you want, but I'm going to emphasize that I am using IntelliJ, and that's what I can support you with. If you want to use VS Code to do this course, please go ahead, but I don't know that I can promise that I can support you. If you want to use the Ultimate Edition, it should be free for you as students. I've heard people saying that they're prompted to pay for it or something, but it ought to be free for you as students. I'm not a student. I don't know what the workflow is to get it for free. I just know that it should be free for you. Anything that we're doing in class, though, the community edition is sufficient, and this is definitely free for use, for personal use. So today, we're going to do a lot of things today. There's some things in here that are just kind of like, these are going to take 30 seconds for me to show you, and you're going to keep doing it over and over and over again this term. But I feel like it's important to tell you what I want you to be able to do in terms of the way that we're using IntelliJ and IDEs in general. So today, we're going to be continuing along with our design, diagram, and implement a domain model. This time, what I want to start doing here is make some choices about the behavior of classes in our domain model using software design principles. At the end of last week or mid last week, I left you with the question of, should our Pokemon class have the responsibility of printing itself? I want to restate that question in a slightly different way, in a more concrete way. I want to show you what I mean by this, and then I want to re-ask that question and then explain to you why no, we probably don't actually want that to happen. I want you to be able to logically and physically organize classes in a project. In Comp 1020, you probably saw the word package show up more than once in your code, and then you were told, don't do that. Make sure that you're not using packages because it makes life painful for your graders. And in this course, we are going to embrace packages. We are going to use packages because it is important for us to have a sense of how to organize all of the different classes that we have in our systems and our projects. And what I want you to be able to begin to do today is to choose and use appropriate language structures for representing domain model objects. We're going to start going through the process of taking the domain model that we built up using UML and Mermaid and translating that into Java. For now, for today, we're going to be using classes to do that. Classes are something that we're all familiar with, but I want you to be able to make choices about using things like record types, and we'll talk more about that on Wednesday. Record types and interfaces. I want you to be able to make choices about which of those are the right thing for the object that we're currently implementing right now. The other things that I want you to be able to do by the end of today's class are use an automated build tool to build a complex project. And so I want you to be able to create a new project using an IDE that integrates a build tool. I'm going to strongly suggest that you use IntelliJ IDEA because it really nicely integrates the build tool that I want you all to use for your projects this term. So we'll create a new project using IntelliJ to do that. And the other thing I want you to do is to be able to run or build a project using an automated build tool within an IDE. There's so much stuff there. So we're going to get started, but these two things are like, you do it once and we're not going to do it that much again. The run and build our project using this build tool, we're going to keep double clicking these buttons like throughout the rest of the course, but I'm not going to talk to you too much about that after today's class. So first and foremost, an IDE. An IDE is a piece of software that is called an integrated development environment. And this is a piece of software that is purpose-built for developing software using a specific programming language. So when I think of the word IDE, I want to make clear that I do not think of Visual Studio Code as an IDE. I don't think of it that way. I believe that it can be configured to become an IDE, but I don't believe that that's what Visual Studio Code is at the beginning. Integrated development environments, to me, are things like IntelliJ IDEA or Eclipse or Visual Studio period. Not Visual Studio Code, but Visual Studio. These are pieces of software that are designed and purpose-built for a specific programming language and for a specific environment. Often, these are going to be a suite of different tools that are collected and put together. They're tightly integrated, and the whole software knows about how that thing works. So IntelliJ knows about Maven. Visual Studio, period, knows a lot about how to build Microsoft products. It knows how to build something that runs on Windows. It knows about all this stuff, and these are often lots of little tiny tools that can accomplish these tasks, but an IDE is one big piece of software that takes all of those ideas and smooshes them together into one software package. What I want to do today is I want to start implementing our domain model using an integrated development environment. I'm going to show you this slide. I'm just going to show you all this stuff, but I wanted to have a written record of what I'm saying to you as I'm stepping through the IntelliJ setup right now. So what I'm going to do right now is I am going to pop over to my terminal, and you can pretend that my terminal does not exist because I don't expect you to launch IntelliJ this way. I'm going to start IntelliJ. And so what I would want you to do at this point is like double click your IntelliJ icon or however you start IntelliJ on your system. The way that I start IntelliJ is like this. I'm starting it up here for the first time, and I realize this is kind of small. I'm going to make it bigger when I can, when I'm able to make that change. I don't want to share any of my usage with IntelliJ and JetBrains. I think they're a great company, but I don't want to do that right now. I also don't want to import anything from Visual Studio Code, so I'm going to skip this import. You are unlikely to see whatever this little prompt is here. I'm going to click that to disable input methods. And the very first thing I'm going to do here is click on New Project once I've started up IntelliJ. Once I do this, there's a set of different options that I'm going to be able to choose from. This is kind of a one-time thing as we're setting up our projects. The very first thing that I'm going to do is this little series of buttons here in the middle. It says Build System. I'm going to choose Maven. Maven is the one that I want you all to be using for your projects this term. So I would encourage you when you're starting up IntelliJ and making your project for the first time to select Maven here. The other thing that I'm going to insist upon is that I want to make sure that I am using Java 17. I'm not wanting to use any new features of Java beyond Java 17. And so for the JDK option here, I'm going to choose download a JDK. So that shows up just below download Oracle JDK, but there's one that's just download JDK ... And I want to select from the list that shows up here. I'm going to choose version 17, and I'll just accept the Microsoft JDK as the default one, and I'll click Select here. I'm going to leave this checkbox checked. It says Add Sample Code. This is going to add a main method and a main class for me. I'll get to you in just a second. And then the last thing I want to do here is I want to make a change under Advanced Settings. There are two things here that I'm just going to ask you to accept as gospel. We will get to them in a moment, but I'm just going to ask you to accept these things right now. The first thing that you can see here is called Group ID. What I'm going to type in here is a reverse domain name. So I'm going to type in ca.umanitoba.cs and then dot, and then I'm going to put my UMNet ID. You should put your own UMNet ID here. This is a way that we're going to be able to kind of like have some base level of organization for projects that are distinct from each other. But for now, just type in this reverse domain. So ca.umanitoba.cs.your UMnet And then the artifact ID, this is going to effectively be the name of the project that we're going to be building. So I'm going to call this 2450 Iman, 2450 Iman, to be consistent with what we've started with here. And you'll notice that the name of the project has also changed as I start typing that in. Yes, I'm sorry for keeping you waiting for so long.
No worries. I just want to make sure I heard properly. The Oracle OpenJDK 17 also works, or would it be better if we downloaded JDK?
I am going to be so the question is about whether the Oracle JDK will work. I'm just going to say, yeah, probably. I don't actually know. Like when you go through this select dialog box, there's like 15 different JDKs that you can choose from. And I don't know what the difference is between Alibaba's and Temurin and Microsoft and Amazon. I don't know what the difference is between all of those things. I know that the Microsoft one is the one that you'd probably get when you start to work with Visual Studio Code, but for the purposes of this class, there's unlikely to be any differences between them. Yeah. Any other questions so far? We're all in the same spot, approximately. All my pencils have just fallen out of my bag. We're good? Okay, awesome. I'm going to click the Create button. It's going to take a moment, and it's going to start downloading the MS OpenJDK. I am here. I am going to do this so that you can actually see my screen. Oh, no. I'm going to minimize that so that I can interact with this. It's because there's 100 people in this room currently downloading the Microsoft JDK all at the same time. I'm going to click on View, Appearance, Zoom Level, and I'm going to make this 150%. Can you at the back all confirm that you can see this okay now? Does this look all right? Should I make it a little bit bigger? Make it bigger, like go like this. Okay, I'll make it a little bit bigger. All right. Okay. Now that I've got this open, you might be in one of two places. You might be looking at a file that is called pom.xml. You might be looking at this file right now, and you might be looking at main.jdk. I will refer to this file that's called pom.xml. This is the configuration file for Maven itself. When we need to touch this, I will tell you about it. But for now, we don't actually need to touch this at all. You can see that things that you typed in and selected, like the group ID, artifact ID, are there. You can see that there's this thing called a version. And then if you have selected Java 17 as your JDK, you can see that this source and target levels are also being set as 17 right now. But for now, I'm just going to ignore this file. I don't want to touch it. For now, we can just accept that it's here. Maven uses this, but this is not something that we need to worry too much about. Instead, I'm going to pop over to main.java. And what we can start to see here is that the editor has in it already this pre-filled in main application. And there are 100 people in this room currently downloading the JDK, and it is going very slowly. It is going very, very slowly for me. And it doesn't show how far it's gone either. Are we all currently downloading the JDK? Yeah.
But that group ID thing, is Unum a part of your like username, or is that you have to add?
Oh, that's a good question. Is a part of my username? is indeed a part of my username.
Like, we would just use our home method.
So it's like what my UMNet ID is what would be before at myumanitoba.ca for me, if I were still a student. This is the username I got. This is the username I got when I was a student here millions of years ago. And at the time, everybody got as a prefix to their username. I don't know why. It was a choice that was made. I prefer your usernames now, but I've been told that I cannot change it. I'm just stuck with it forever. I can't change it. I'm not allowed to change it. This is my life now. Yeah. All right. I see that some interesting things have happened here, like these files no longer exist. I am going to very quickly just close IntelliJ and start it again. This is an excellent introduction to IntelliJ. I promise that I actually practiced all this stuff before coming to class, and it works just fine. This file doesn't exist. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna delete this project. I'm going to just make a new project. I'm gonna make a new project. Oh gosh, okay, live and in person. I'm going to go to choose Maven as my build system. I'm going to leave Microsoft 17 as the JDK. I'm going to change this from 2450 Amon to 2450 Amon again. You don't have to type in the suffix again here, of course. When you're doing this, this is just me having a bad experience with the thing that I'm trying to tell you all to use because it's great and it works perfectly every single time, right? I'm going to hit create here. I'm going to say this window. I want to open it in this window. Awesome. Okay, things appear to be working a little bit more smoothly here. So on the left side of my screen here, what you can see is File Explorer. This is a listing of the classes. There's a folder structure that has been created here for me, source, main, Java. And then here is this group ID that I set up. And then here is the name of the class that gets created by default. Here is that pom.xml file, and we're just going to ignore that for now. Once I've got main.java open, there's some cool stuff that we can take a look at here that ought to look pretty familiar to you in terms of using Java with Visual Studio Code. There is a friendly looking play button there that when I click that friendly looking play button, I can run main.main. And running main.main will start compiling this for me and running it in exactly the same experience that you might have had with comp 1020. There are also some indicators here about using the debugger. So setting breakpoints here. I'm going to skip over this for now, but it gives you some idea of how you can use the debugger in Visual Studio Code. IntelliJ. Your experience with Visual Studio Code will be similar to what you see in IntelliJ here. The other thing that I really quickly want to show you is on the very right side of the screen here, there's this Maven button. I'm going to click on that. And then underneath the name of the project here, I can see that there are these different tabs. One of them is Lifecycle or drop down or expand menus. One of them is called Lifecycle. This has a set of different options that you can choose to do things like compile and package your code. I'm going to double click on package here. And what this does is it will start taking all of the classes that are in this project and it will start mooshing them all together into this thing that's called a jar file. Did you use jar files at all in 1020? Okay. So a jar file is a little bit like an exe file in Windows. It's a little bit like that in that it takes everything that's in your code, it compiles it, and then it puts it into one single file that you can use often to run with a JDK. Okay, so now that we've got this, what I want to start doing is starting to move some stuff into here that we've already started working with. I'm going to make a new file. I'm going to close these for now. I'm going to make a new file in my project here, new file, and I'm going to call this one readme.md. I want to make this new file that's called readme.md, and what I want to put inside of readme.md is I want to put in the content of the README that we created last week. So I'm going to pop over to my web browser briefly here. I'm going to go to GitLab, and I've shared this with you up on the course webpage. A link to this from the last lecture we did on Wednesday. I'm going to click on this, and then I'm going to click on this open raw button here. It's like a little page that has a greater than symbol and then an underscore beside it. I want to select all of this. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it into my README here. I'm going to hit save on this, and I'm going to enable this browser. I'm going to click Disable Sandbox. Do you see Disable Sandbox on yours? Does anybody see this button? Yes? No? I'm going to click Disable Sandbox. I'm going to exit. It's going to relaunch IntelliJ for me. Here we go. And now we have something similar to what we saw with Visual Studio Code. But what's nice here to me, I like this, is on the left side of my README here, there's a button that just says download the Mermaid viewer. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to install this Mermaid plugin. I'm going to click OK on this. Is going to re-render this. And now we've got our entire diagram in here for the class setup that we've got. And I really like that. I like that it makes it straightforward to get to this point of having this Mermaid diagram show up in our README file. But we still haven't done any coding yet. So all I've done is like turn on my IDE and start to install some extensions in it. I'm going to come back to here in a moment. I'm going to go back to my slides. I'll give you a moment to catch up here if you want to follow along with me. In Comp 1020, you probably saw this word package before, and you were told, please don't use packages because it messes with our graders working with your code. In Java, a package is a way to organize our classes. There are two ways that this organization happens. One is this is a logical way to organize packages, Java classes. So we're going to have some kind of common theme for the classes that fit together in one package. But this is also a physical way to organize our classes. Physical in the sense that this will apply to the way that the actual class files, the Java files, show up in our folder structure. So this is a logical organization in the sense that all of the classes that we have in a package generally have a common purpose. And physical, there are actually folder structures that fit underneath this entire thing. Packages, when we're making them, generally are going to be, I want to group these things that have a common purpose together into one folder so that when I'm looking at the things that are within this one folder, it's pretty clear to me what that thing is supposed to be. Examples of packages are things like model. This is where all of our domain model objects are going to live. Another one might be output. These are classes that have a responsibility of producing output in our system. These are all the classes that will have system.out.println in them. And these are the only classes that will have system.out.println in them. It might be something like game logic. This is where all of the code goes that encodes information about how the game itself actually works, the rules and so on. IntelliJ and a lot of IDEs will manage this package and folder structure relationship for us. When I make a new package with my IDE, it will automatically make the folder structure for me so that I don't have to go in and make the folders manually myself. So I'm going to pop back to my IDE right now. I'm going to pop back to IntelliJ. I'm going to close my README for now, and I'm going to make a new package. I'm going to make a new package by right-clicking on the Java folder here. I'm going to pick New, and then I'm going to choose Package here. We're going to start making instances of classes that are our domain model. And so I'm going to name this package domain. Yeah, I'm really sorry. I wanted to right-click on the name of this. And so I'm going to move this here. I'm going to click and drag it here, refactor. So what I did was I accidentally made it under the Java folder, but I want to make it underneath this group ID that I set up initially. So right-clicking here, new package, typing in domain here. This is what I was looking to do. Once I've done this, what I've got is a package that's called ca.umanitoba.cs.umbrist1. This is going to be for all of the files and classes that are in my project. This is the prefix package that all of them are going to have. And then within this, I want to have packages that are going to represent the groups of classes that I want to have within this project. I'm going to come back to this in just a second. And what I want to take a look at here is the UML diagram that we had created from last class. The thing that I want to start implementing here is I want to start implementing the Pokemon class. I'm going to start implementing this Pokemon class. Initially, what I'm going to do is just use a class type because we're all familiar with this idea of a class. And so I want to stick with this idea of a class to start implementing my domain model. I'm going to pop back over to IntelliJ here. And within my domain, I'm going to make a new class, a new Java class. There are a bunch of options that I get here about the kind of thing that I'm going to create. And for now, I'm going to just make a class. I'm going to make a class. On Wednesday, we're going to use interface, record, and maybe enum. But for today, I just want to make a class. I'm going to call this file Pokemon. At the very top here, we can see that we've got this package that represents the package structure that we've got in our folder structure here, and an empty instance of the class that I want to create. I'm going to start by taking the properties that I have defined in this Pokemon class. So I'm going to go back to my web browser for just 1 second here. The properties that I've got in my Pokemon class right now are health. Last week, when we were doing domain modeling, what I was asking you to do here is I want you to say non-technical terms that best describe what this value could possibly be. And so what we left with here was positive number. Somebody raised it to me after class. This should be 0 or positive number, so something that's greater than 0 as opposed to just positive number. Fair enough. But in Java, if I take a look at the JDK, if I look at the documentation for that, I want to look for Java JDK and number. I didn't really want that. I'm looking for this. And I realize this is Java 8, but it's good enough for what I'm thinking about right now. In Java, there is a class that's called number. And there are a bunch of these subclasses that implement the number type. But none of them are positive number. None of them are positive number. None of them encode this idea that it has to be a positive number or a number that doesn't have a sign on it. So that kind of means to me that I'm actually, it's okay, I'm going to have to go back and actually start using types in this thing. The best thing that I can choose to represent this thing that is positive number here for now is going to be an integer. And so I'm going to choose an integer to represent that type. So I'm going to say private int health. I want this to be private because I don't want other classes to be able to see it. I want to encapsulate the data that I'm working with. But I'm going to put a comment here. This number must always be greater than or equal to 0. I'm not going to put final on this because I do want this to be able to change as this class exists. I want this value to be able to go up, and I want this value to be able to go down. The other thing that we have in our domain model, I'm going to pop back to my web browser here briefly. The other thing that we have in our domain model is this attack method. And so I want to start implementing this attack method now. We'll go back to IntelliJ, and I'm going to make this a public instance method, so consistent with that minus and plus symbol that I have in my UML diagram. The return type that I have in my UML diagram is void. This doesn't return anything. And I want this method to be called attack. What I want this to take as an input is the instance of Pokemon that I'm going to be attacking from this one. I'm going to write a comment about this. Attack another Pokemon. The health of the instance that we're attacking will be reduced by 1. If you've played Pokemon before, you know that there's like lots going into like the attack process, but I want to keep this real small. I just want to make it go down by 1. So I'm reducing the health of the instance that we're attacking by 1. And so what I want to be able to say with this is p dot health minus equals 1. P is the Pokemon I'm attacking. Because I'm inside the class that has this type, I can just refer directly to these private instance variables. I don't have to like make a mutator for this. I can just directly reference it because I'm already inside that class. I know about what that class's internal implementation details are, so I don't have to do anything extra to my class setup to be able to do this. But I want to be able to reduce it by 1 each time I do this. The very last thing that I want to do in this class is I want to add a constructor. I'm going to say that this takes as input a single argument that's called initial health. And I'm going to say that this dot health is equal to initial health. The class that I've written here now is slightly inconsistent with the domain model that I had. And so I'm going to go back to my domain model and make a change to my domain model so that they become consistent. The inconsistency that I have between my domain model and the class that I've written is that the class that I'm written actually has the type for the health property here. It uses int as a type. And so I'm going to go back to my domain model, and we're going to slowly refine this domain model to have the actual types and be consistent with the actual implementation that we've got. Yeah.
So, excuse me, does that mean throughout implementation, we should be constantly changing the domain model?
As it makes sense. Should you change your domain model? Yes, you should, as it makes sense. What we're going to see eventually is that there are some awkward things with what I'm doing right now that we will need to make changes to our domain model. But yes, as you're going through and implementing stuff, you're kind of figuring out a little bit more about your domain model and the way that you can actually implement it versus what you thought you could do in the first place. So you should go back and make changes to that domain model. Yeah.
There's no natively defined variable type that's 0 or positive. And when we're making our domain model, we didn't put int then. We know that we're just going to go back to replace it later rather than doing the positive number step.
I'm asking you, so the question is, can we just start with integer instead of using a positive number or greater than 0 or whatever? Part of what I'm asking you to do with this is I'm asking you to explicitly indicate what valid values are for this thing. And so I've taken that indication of what a valid value is from the UML diagram, and I put it here as a comment in my code. I'm taking what I wrote initially and moving it into my implementation. And then I'm going to go back to my domain model right now and change my domain model to reflect what's in my actual implementation. But I'm also going to put that comment there. So the exercise that I'm asking you to do with use these types that are kind of non-technical and well describe what it is, I'm trying to force you to think about, like, these are the constraints that I have on this property. Can you just put int and then put the comment there? Sure, you can skip that step if you want, but I'm trying to encourage you to make sure that you're actually making that thought before you get to the point of implementing this thing. Okay, so I'm going to pop back to my README right now. And I'm going to start making changes to my domain model here. And what I'm going to do with this is I've got the Pokemon class right here. I've got positive number health. I'm going to change this to int. And what I'm going to do is write a comment here that says must be greater than or equal to 0. So that now my domain model diagram and my actual implementation of my class are consistent with one another. Yeah.
You have to add like as many comments as this, or something?
So that's a good question. Do you have to add as many comments to your domain model diagram as this? To the class in general? So to your domain model, no, you don't need to add this many comments. The kinds of things that I'm looking for you to add as comments are things like what I've just highlighted on the screen here. So like indicating what those values are supposed to be. A lot of what I've put into some of these are like, some of them are my own internal thoughts that I want to share with you. And some of them are meant to be things that I said in class, but didn't really indicate in the diagrams that I drew. And some of it is meant to be like illustrative for somebody starting out with this. So I wouldn't necessarily expect you to write all the stuff that I'm writing here. With the classes that you're writing, I would expect you to have comments like this above methods that you're implementing, yes. We're going to be publishing some programming standards very soon, consistent with where we are in the course right now. But the entire block that has your name and student number and stuff at the top of every single file that you submit is not something that we're really looking for in this course, no. A lot of the stuff that you're doing here for like name and identifying information can be put into the README file so that it just applies to the entire project as opposed to every single class. Yeah. Okay. All right, so I'm going to pop back to my slides. And last week on Wednesday, I left you with this question about this thing that's called the single responsibility principle. So to briefly remind you, this idea of solid where KISS and Yagni are design philosophies. Embrace minimalism, try to make sure that your domain model just represents what you have in the statement or the project that you're working on, or the small part of the project that you're working on right now. Solid is a set of principles, and these are meant to be effectively what I would call rules. These describe what your classes should and should not do broadly. So this applies to all classes as opposed to individual classes, but these are actual rules that state things. The single responsibility principle says, do one thing and do that one thing well. And so one of the questions that I left you with on Wednesday was, should the Pokemon class have the responsibility of printing itself out? What I mean by that is this. Should this public class Pokemon have a method inside of it that says public void print, and then it prints out all the properties of the Pokemon class? I'm going to give you a moment to think about this. And then I'm going to start making changes to my domain model that I believe best reflects what I want to have happen in this thing. So take 30 seconds to just think about this. Okay. I'm going to make the argument that no, we don't actually want to have this method inside the Pokemon class. The main idea of what I'm going to tell you about right now, and with regard to the single responsibility principle, is that classes that are like Pokemon, where Pokemon is really like a class that represents this thing, should really only have the responsibility of managing their own data. As it is right now, the Pokemon class that we've got that manages health, that's its responsibility. I want this class to manage the health of a Pokemon, and that's it. This class should not know about system.out. It shouldn't know how to print itself. It shouldn't know how to print itself in the same way that a Pokemon class shouldn't know how to draw a Pokemon on my screen. In the same way that a Pokemon class should not have to know or care about how the internet works. All of these things are effectively the same to me in terms of responsibilities that might be related to something we want to do with a Pokemon, something we want to do with an instance of this class, but that the class itself should not need to know about. It shouldn't have to do all of those things. And so what I want to start doing here is, if we were to add that method to this class, we're going to start adding this idea of more than one responsibility. So managing the data and also displaying the data. And what I want to do is to take that idea and start to split it into a couple of different classes. What I want to do with this is I want to go back to my domain model, and I want to add a new class that has just the responsibility of printing an instance of Pokemon. And that class is going to be called Pokemon Printer. Yeah. It should do one specific thing. Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah.
Should it return, like, can we use like the string to return the info from the class itself?
So the question is, should we use toString? I think that's what you're saying. Should we use toString? In that I have 6 minutes left to do what I want to do, I'm going to just say no. Yes, I'm going to say no, and I'm going to justify this to you later, but I'm going to say no for now. So what I'm going to do here is I want to pop back to my IntelliJ instance. I'm going to go to my README. I'm going to close the preview just so that we can see what I'm doing here. And what I want to do is I want to add a new class to my domain model. The class that I'm going to add to my domain model here is called Pokemon Printer. What I want it to have is an instance of Pokemon. the thing that I'm actually going to print, and I want it to have a method that's called print. It's going to return void. The relationship that I've got between Pokemon Printer and Pokemon, so it has an instance of this class as part of its class definition here. And so we have this has a relationship. I want to be able to use composition or aggregation to describe these things. I'm going to say that this is an aggregate relationship. When I destroy this instance of Pokemon Printer, I do not want to destroy the instance of Pokemon that's attached to it. I'm just using this as a reference to print out that thing. I'm going to save my domain model. I will share this with you again after class. I'm going to share this entire repository with you after class, this project with you after class. But what I am going to do is I'm going to make a new class here. I'm going to make a new package. I'm going to call this package output. These are going to be 4 classes that have the responsibility of producing output in my system. I'm going to make a new class called Pokemon Printer. It's going to have private Pokemon P, the one that I want to print. I'm going to import this class. I'm also going to add final here. When I make an instance of this class, I'm going to have a reference to a Pokemon, but I want to make the promise. I'm not changing anything about that Pokemon. That is my intent. I do not want to make any changes to what this thing is supposed to be. So I'm using the final keyword to indicate I don't want to make any changes to the class I'm referencing. One thing you'll notice is that immediately my IDE is telling me, hey, you have made, you've declared this instance of Pokemon type attribute, but it's a compile time error because you haven't initialized it as part of the constructor. So I'm going to add a constructor to this, public Pokemon Printer. It's going to take an instance of final Pokemon P. Again, I do not want to make changes to the thing that's being passed to me. And I'm going to say this dot P equals P. Yeah.
Why are we adding final in the argument as well?
Final in the argument here says exactly the same thing as what it does in the instance. It's that I don't want to reassign this or make changes to it. You're going to pass this thing to me, and I also don't want to make changes to the thing that you're passing to me right now. So I'll write that as a comment here. The final says that you're passing me an instance of the Pokemon class. Effectively, I promise not to make any changes to it. Effectively, that's what this is saying. I promise not to make changes. I promise not to call mutators on this class and make changes to its content. That's right. I want to add to this public void print Pokemon, or just print. And what I effectively want to be able to say here is system.out.println current health is plus, and then P dot, and I want to be able to access that thing. I want to be able to access what the health is. And I believe this is where your toString question is coming from. I'm going to say we shouldn't use toString. I'm going to assert that. Again, I've got 40 seconds left now. I'm going to assert that we don't want to use toString. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to my domain model diagram. I'm going to take a look at Pokemon. I'm going to add a public accessor, current health. It's going to have a return type of int. And what I'm going to write here as a comment is will not be less than 0. I promise you that when I return something from this method, it will not be less than 0. It is an integer, but I promise that it's not going to be less than 0. So I'm skipping the whole step of like, positive number versus negative number versus whatever. I'm just writing int here, and I'm going to say promise that it's not going to be less than 0. Yeah.
So does that mean, I guess, the process we should be doing is creating a domain model, implementing part of it, then going back and editing the domain model under that cycle?
As necessary, yes. There should be some cycle here that feeds back to your domain model that makes changes. You might make your domain model and you don't need to go back and make changes to it, but I'm demonstrating it this way to kind of show like, yeah, it's okay to go back to your domain model and make changes to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like we don't have to say like, hey, it's the domain model final, we're not changing it.
No, your domain model should not be rigidly written in stone right now, or at all. Yeah. Yes.
Make methods like current health. Should we pass P inside the mem graph?
I'm not going to pass P inside here because I'm just accessing something that's internal to this instance of this class. I'm going to ask you both to come see me after class. The very last thing I want to do here is I want to add to my Pokemon class this method. So public int current health. I'm going to say return this dot current health or health. I'm going to write the comment for now that says the current health will not be less than 0. And then once I've got that, I should be able to say p dot current health here. Okay. We will continue working on this on Wednesday, but to very quickly summarize here, you should be able to do lots of things now, and some of these are really little. You should be able to make choices about the behavior of classes of a domain model using software design principles. So the single responsibility principle says effectively a class should be responsible, in our cases, for managing itself, and a separate class should be responsible for printing that thing. You should be able to use packages to logically and physically organize classes in a project. Beginning, you should be able to choose an appropriate language structure for representing domain model objects, and you should be able to start working with an IDE to use this build tool to build your complex projects. That's it for today. Thank you for 2 extra minutes of your time, and I will see you on Wednesday. Bye, everybody.